This is Jared with my final mind map. This one's for the senses. The mind map starts here at the right and then flows around. So we'll start in the bottom right corner here. So basically our five senses, we start with sight, touch, taste, hearing, and smell. They're our sensory organs. They're constantly receiving stimuli from our the world surrounding us. They're sending signals through to the brain. And this is where it gets quite interesting because once these signals are received, they go through an interesting process which gives that information to certain parts of the brain, and then the brain decides from there what it's going to do, and it works quite in an interesting way. So a stimuli, it goes through, it's transmitted in a function called transduction. This is interesting in the sense it's creating cells. Once those cells have received enough stimuli and it's worth validating that response, it will send off those cells to the brain. This is a process called coding, and then once there, the brain figures out what to do with this code. The brain's constantly processing this information, so our bodies are constantly under stimulus. So whether it be sight, sound, temperature, vibrations, things like that, and the brain's always processing, is this valid? Should we respond to it? Is it nothing, non-threatening? Should we not respond? So this is a process called adaptation, and it's kind of like a survival mechanism, validating whether something's safe or whether something's dangerous and which way we should respond. So a good adaptation example would be putting on a pair of shoes. They might feel firm at the start, and you'll notice that difference in pressure on your feet as opposed to not wearing them. Your brain would recognize that difference, but then after a couple of minutes, it will deem those senses that we're constantly feeling that we don't need to worry about it anymore as it's not posing a threat. And then it will just pretty much turn off those receptors. So any information coming in that's similar to that, it will just ignore. So if we zoom out, we'll go over to the other side and then we'll learn with all this information coming into the brain, how it is being perceived. So we'll start here over on the left with perception. There's a couple of ways in which the brain is going to perceive this information, top down or bottom up. And these are different theories in the way in which we're compiling that to sort of make that information valuable to us. So top down is going to reflect on previous experience. And then bottom up is kind of like building a puzzle. So it's going to get like little sparks of information and then like build that puzzle piece up. There's also quantitative and qualitative. This is interesting. Quantitative, it is how we perceive different things. So we might, two people could look at the same object or situation and then perceive it in different ways. So somebody might be processing it in a quantitative manner. So the water bottle example, they might sort of explain, oh, it's got a round base, it's so long, and it's got a round cap, where somebody might be explaining it in a qualitative manner. And that would be straight away just identifying it as a bottle from the properties being presented. If we move on here to our second column, the recognition. So once we've received information in the brain, there's a few different things worth understanding, a few concepts, I should say. One is perceptual consistency. I think this is a really interesting theory because once we've identified something, an example being a door, we've got that stimuli, the door might swing open, therefore changing our perception. So light would change, there'll be other stimuli changes around us constantly, but our brain hold onto that ideal and build that information. And then that is what we call perceptual consistency. Another thing, because like we are constantly presented with so much stimuli, sound, an example would be like phone, we've got our computer, we've got people working behind us in a busy office, that kind of stuff. Our brain is able to choose what is valuable and what's not. And this is what's called selective attention. So we can tune out the background noise and focus on the task at hand. The brain, in relation to the senses, we'll just finish off on the last column here, action. This is quite fun because we often think about five senses, but those in conjunction with one another are sort of creating like really elaborate subsystems that are beneficial to our day-to-day lives. One being the proprioceptive and vestibular systems. So they are working often with like touch, sound, and sight. For a vestibular example, is to sort of like understand our head position within space. And proprioception is kind of like how our muscles and joints give the sense of movement and action and location within space. So I think that's a pretty detrimental. So for now, we'll just leave it there. That's my little mind map for senses. So thanks for watching. Cheers.